What's going on, everyone? It's been a minute since I've posted something on my channel. Part of that has been because I haven't really been watching a whole lot of stuff that I've wanted to share my thoughts to. And the few things that I have been watching, which have mostly been TV shows, when I wanted to sit down and record my thoughts, I either got too busy or I just really wasn't feeling it in the moment. But that all changed after this past weekend when I saw The Batman, and I'd like to share my thoughts on that movie. First things first, I really enjoyed this movie. There weren't a whole lot of things that I had to complain about. I want to start off by talking about all of the acting performances, and then after that I'll talk about just general things about the movie that I either liked or didn't like. And I'd like to start with Andy Serkis as Alfred. Now, this portrayal of Alfred was more similar to Jeremy Irons' portrayal in the kind of Zack Snyder, Ben Affleck Batman movies, where he's a little bit more like active in helping Batman, solve his crimes and do his vigilante stuff, whereas the Michael Caine version of Alfred is more, he's not like actively helping him. He's not always discouraging him either. He's just kind of like a passive observer. Not saying that either of those portrayals is any better. I'm not saying I like anyone more than the other. I will say that Andy Serkis's, as Alfred, his involvement in the plot gave me a bit of an emotional attachment to him. Like, I was invested in his, like, I was concerned for him. I cared about whether he was safe or not. So I guess that does say something about the performance. But overall, I would have liked to have seen him a little bit more in the movie, but I was happy with what we got of him regardless. Based on the trailers, I thought that Jeffrey Wright's portrayal of Gordon would be the most serious that we've gotten, but it actually ended up being like the exact opposite. I felt like it was the most laid back. Like, whenever he would talk to Batman, he'd be like, "Oh, like, calm down, man," and like he was just a little bit more casual, which I think I liked it. It made sense because at this point he's really the only cop in Gotham that trusts Batman and the only cop that Batman trusts. So I guess it makes sense that he would try to be a little bit more of a friend to him than like a professional colleague, at the risk of alienating Batman and then not getting his help for future crimes when the cops need him. So again, it was not at all what I expected, but I really, really enjoyed it. I thought that Colin Farrell nailed his role as the Penguin, and oh my gosh, did the makeup department and costume department do an amazing job. He's totally unrecognizable. His acting still comes through. It doesn't sound like Ben Mendelsohn in Captain Marvel, where it's kind of like muffled. You can still really hear him clearly. He was sort of the comic relief character, but it wasn't like forced. It was just like his character was a little bit more laid back about everything, which I appreciated, that it made the comedy in the movie feel like natural, and it wasn't just like a character cracking a joke because there hadn't been a joke in a while. His character added a little bit of levity to the story. I do believe they're making a prequel series on HBO Max, which I'm interested in watching, so Colin Farrell, 2 thumbs up for me. The next character I've always sort of had an issue with, not in terms of portrayal, but in terms of how this character's storyline has progressed, and that is Catwoman, Selena Kyle, in this movie portrayed by Zoe Kravitz. The issue I've always had with Catwoman in the movies is that they always bring in her for like one movie or the last movie in the series. And she's supposed to have like a sort of a romantic, like flirty relationship with Batman, but they always insist on starting and ending that relationship in the same movie, and it always feels sort of rushed and sometimes a little bit cheesy and corny because they'll like kiss or whatever, and it just doesn't come off as serious. I do appreciate that in this movie they get right up to the border of it being just a little bit too cheesy for me, but I like that they leave room for that relationship to potentially develop in like a future movie. It never got to like, I was never like, oh, this doesn't feel real, this feels forced, I don't buy their like budding romance potentially. It always was like, there could be something there, but we're not gonna bring it into this movie. And Zoe Kravitz I think she's a great actor, a great actress. She was really awesome in this movie. I'm hoping that they bring her in and let that relationship develop naturally in potentially future sequels. Paul Dano played the Riddler, and I'm going to be honest, I've never seen any sort of movie or TV show with Paul Dano in it. I'm aware of what he's been in, and I know that he's widely regarded as a very talented actor. I've just never gotten around to watching any of his movies, and so I did have somewhat high expectations of him in this movie, and oh my gosh, did he crush it. I'm not going to use the phrase like scene stealing or anything, because I think every single scene was like it was almost perfect in my eyes. It was a combination of everything going on at once. I wouldn't say that he like stole any of the scenes that weren't focused on him, But I will say there were two scenes in particular where he had a little bit of extended dialogue where was like absolutely riveted. Like I was in my mind, I was thinking like, this is awesome. This is awesome. It was just so good. I could not turn away. Paul Dano was awesome. And his casting was perfect. I can't really put it any different than that. I guess I should probably talk about the lead character, Robert Pattinson as Batman. I am a little bit tired of people like giving him crap for having been in the Twilight movies. Yeah, we know that those I think those movies are pretty terrible. And his acting, it's not great, but he does the best with a script which was also terrible. He's been in good movies since then. Like he's proven himself to be a talented actor. And there was a lot of backlash, of course, when he got cast for this role. I'm happy to say I really enjoyed him in this role. There weren't any moments where I was looking at him as Batman and being like, oh, that's Robert Pattinson as Batman. Every time he was in the suit, I was just like, that's Batman. It being Robert Pattinson did not annoy me. Like I wasn't annoyed initially, but it didn't stand out to me. One aspect of his performance that people have been talking a lot about, whether it be, positively or negatively, is that his portrayal of Bruce Wayne and Batman are like the same person in this movie. A lot of people have been using the word like brooding or broody. So traditionally, especially in the Christian Bale Batman movies, Bruce Wayne is like a separate character. And then when Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, he has like two alter egos, right? He puts on like a show when he's Bruce Wayne, and then Batman is kind of his vigilante ego. In this movie, it's just all the same. Bruce Wayne and Batman are pretty much the same character. And I think for this story that works. Like a big theme of this movie is he's doing this because of vengeance. Like he's still kind of mourning the loss of his family. He's trying to get revenge on and get some closure. And he's still kind of like both as Batman and as Bruce Wayne, he's still trying to process what's happened in his life. So I do think it makes sense for him at this point, having only been Batman for 2 years, to not be ready to get over that. So I think it makes sense for this point in his story as Batman to not have like the Bruce Wayne alter ego that we're used to seeing. I do think if they're going to continue to make movies in this universe with Robert Pattinson, it would probably make sense for him at some point to get to that kind of alter ego, like Playboy Bruce Wayne type that we're used to. But I think for this movie, it worked. I didn't have an issue with it. So those are what I thought about the acting performances. Just some other aspects of the movie that I wanted to talk about. I really hope that the Academy of Motion Picture and Sciences, or whatever it's called, that gives the Oscars, remembers this movie in a year, because I really think the cinematography deserves at least a nomination, because, man, every single shot in this movie was framed beautifully. The score was awesome, which when you have to compete with the score from the Dark Knight trilogy, I think this one definitely holds up. And all of that kind of came into play with a certain aspect of the movie that I really enjoyed, which was every time that Batman entered a scene, it felt like an event to me. Like whether it was Batman emerging slowly from the shadows and you can only hear his like boots walking on the pavement, whether it's him like busting a glass ceiling and hot dropping down and to fight some bad guys, or whether it's him driving the Batmobile into a super intense chase scene. Everything just felt like momentous, and it looked really good. And again, that's a combination of just the way it was framed, the cinematography, and the music, and just everything worked in that aspect. I also really felt that this was the first time that Gotham City has felt like a character almost. It felt really lived in. In the previous Batman movies, we're told all about Gotham, how it's like a cesspool and it's riddled with crime and stuff. But we only ever really see like the main characters of the story, and then Gotham is just used as the backdrop. It really felt like in this movie, Gotham like meant something. They gave it character. It had a distinct look and feel, and I really felt that this was like the best look at Gotham that we've gotten to see in a Batman movie. And I think that is something that makes this movie stand out from the rest. Yeah, so overall, this movie was almost like a 10 out of 10 for me. I talked about the minor issue I had was they kind of towed the line with the romance between Catwoman and Batman, but I think they pumped the brakes just the right amount. A lot of people complain that this movie was too long. I didn't personally feel that it was too long. Sure, it's 3 hours, but I thought it flew by. Maybe there were one or two too many endings. Like, I don't know, the ending, I was like, okay, is this going to be the last shot? Is this going to be the last shot? You know, just kind of waiting to see what was the actual end going to be. But, you know, that's a nitpick for me. But you know, I don't foresee myself seeing 10 better movies than this year. I know it's only March and, you know, knock on wood, but I could see myself talking about this movie in about 9 months on my top 10 movies of the year. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, so The Batman. Have you seen it? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for more.